time for Nerdgasm.
Hey, what's up, Nerdgasm fans? Jerry here, aka Barnacles. Now, you guys know I love mechanical gaming keyboards. Now, the guys over at Corsair just sent me over a couple of their latest Cherry MX RGB backlit mechanical keyboards, and I have them right here. I got the K65. Now, this thing's badass because it doesn't have a 10 key, because honestly, a lot of gamers don't use 10 keys, so why take up that extra space? But just in case you happen to be an accountant, they got you covered with the K70. Now there's also a K95 that they did not send me for some reason, but the only difference is it takes up even more space, but it has a ton of macro buttons for you guys that are macro whores.
You know who you are.
So let's unbox these babies and see how they perform. I already unboxed them. All right, guys, so here we have the K70 and the K65 both out of their box and assembled with the wrist rests. Both of them come with this wrist rest right here that just comes off very, very easily and just snaps right back on. It's actually probably one of the easiest wrist rests I've ever removed. Now, the keyboards are almost identical. The only defining differences on these is the K70 has more multimedia keys. It has a stop, last track, next track, pause, and play button. It's also got a volume control in the form of a knob that you can move up and down, and it has a mute button. Now, the other keyboard, the K65 here, actually has just a volume up and a volume down button. It doesn't have any other multimedia keys, and it doesn't have the roller for the volume. So there are some subtle differences, but other than that, the two keyboards are absolutely identical. So let's go ahead and take the K65 here and set it to the side for a minute. All right, so if we look at the K70 and we flip it around on the backside, you can see that there's a switch. And I thought this was a little weird because I haven't seen a keyboard actually have like a switch on the back of it. And it just says 1, 2, 4, 8 in BIOS. And basically what this is the 1, 2, 4, and 8 are the millisecond pulling rate that you want to set for the keyboard. So 1 millisecond obviously is going to be the fastest because it's pulling for keystrokes every 1 millisecond. But they give you the option to slow it down. Now, I think most of that is for compatibility reasons with some computers that might not handle a 1 millisecond pulling rate. It might be too much, might overwhelm the computer. And also you have a BIOS setting, and that's for if you have an old legacy computer or something like that that doesn't recognize this keyboard or the high pulling rate or the features of this keyboard in the BIOS. It basically disables all of that and reverts it back to just a very basic keyboard so you can use your BIOS, and then you can just flip it back to 1 when you're done. Now, another cool feature of this keyboard is it comes with this huge braided USB cable. I would say it's probably close to 6 foot in length. And it actually has 2 connectors on the end, but it's all heavy duty. It's got like paracord braiding over it. In a lot of ways, I think it's almost overkill for a size of a USB cable. I realize they do have to get 2 USB cords through there, but it is a very, very stiff cable. So you do have to work with it a little bit to get it to route. Now, the keyboard has 2 USB connectors on it. One of these is for the keyboard itself, and one of them is for the power for the keyboard, because it does need an immense amount of power, because it does have, it's covered completely in red, green, blue LEDs, and it also has a built-in computer or controller that runs those, so that all requires extra power that a single USB won't provide. Now, if you have a USB 3.0 connection, you only have to plug in one of these USB connectors, specifically the one with the keyboard logo on it. But if you have a USB 2 computer, you do have to plug both of these in for the keyboard to function. Now, a couple of the design cues for this keyboard are actually really cool. I'm going to go ahead and remove the wrist rest. You can notice looking at the side of the keyboard that all of the switches are completely exposed. You don't have that plastic shield that comes right up to the edge of the key. And I think that that's really cool because it makes this incredibly easy to clean. If you get crap stuck between the keys, you can literally flip it on its side, just bump it a couple times, and all the crap falls out. Other keyboards, you usually have to take them apart, pull the keys off to clean them out. This is just insanely easy to blow out and clean. I like that, and it also allows the LED effect to come through a lot better, which I'll show you shortly. Also, I'd like to mention it's a pretty heavy keyboard, and the entire top of the keyboard actually is an aluminum plate, which I think is really, really cool. You know, I use the DOS keyboards a lot, and they also have a fully metallic top plate, and there's just something about it that adds to the keyboard. It gives a little extra weight so it doesn't move around the desktop, but it definitely makes it feel more rigid and more professional. Now, the cool thing about having the keys exposed is normally you need something called a key puller to pull the keys because they're flush with the plastic and you can't get your fingers around them. On this keyboard, you can literally just pull the keycaps off. I mean, it's as easy as just grabbing them because you can get your fingertips under the key. And you can see this K70 specifically has the Cherry MX Brown switches, which are actually one of my more preferred switches. The things I like about the Brown is they're not too loud and they still give you that nice tactile click, a lot like the blue switches. Now, if we shift gears over to the other keyboard, the K65, this one actually has Cherry MX Red switches. You can see when I pull the little keycaps off. I love how easy it is to remove the keycaps. If you guys get your keyboard dirty a lot, this is the keyboard for you. Now, the Cherry MX Red switches are nice because if you come from a membrane keyboard and you don't like that really heavy keystroke, the Reds feel a lot more like a membrane keyboard in that it's a very, very linear push. You don't really get a click or any kind of positive engagement. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the Red switches, but using them on this keyboard, I've actually liked it quite a bit. And the one big trade-off that you have is with the Red switches, you get that nice quiet sound, so if you're live streaming or recording, the keyboard doesn't pick up as much. When you're using blue and brown switches, you definitely have to tune your audio hardware so that you're not picking up those really loud clicks. All right, so the last thing I want to show you guys before we plug it in is if you flip the keyboard around on the back, you have the little stands that pop out in the corner that allow the keyboard to sit at a little bit of a ramped angle. Now, it's not an extreme angle. I've seen some keyboards that come up quite a bit higher than this, so just be aware it doesn't come up, say, as much as an IBM Model M, but it does come up. But the thing that I thought was really cool is they also included ones in the front of the keyboard, so you can flip these two up, and it actually gives the keyboard a flat stance. Now the keyboard, if you look at it, it's completely flat. So people that like that type of typing style can do it. And the neat thing is when you install the wrist rest on the keyboard, it hinges. So you can literally have it to where it's completely flat like this. You can pop the front ones down. You can have it at a slide angle, or you can have it at a more aggressive angle. And as you can see, it's really easy to transition. Or you can put those feet down and this feet, and you see it actually gives the keyboard a really tall off-the-desk stance. Now, I've done quite a bit of typing in each one of the positions, and the one that I seem to like the best is just the old, traditional, all the feet down. Just basically flat on the desk. But depending on how you type and if you get wrist fatigue, having that option to be able to slightly move the keyboard around a little bit every once in a while is a big plus. Alright guys, so now I have the keyboard plugged in. One thing you'll notice is when you plug the keyboard in, it takes a good 5 to 8 seconds for the keyboard to actually boot up and for the LEDs to come on, which indicates that there's probably a lot of processing going on this keyboard. Now, before we get into the software, which is really what makes this thing shine, and also subsequently is some of the problems with it, which we'll talk about, is you have a button up here that adjusts the brightness, and you see you have 4 different brightness levels. And you can actually do some configuration with this button also. And you have a Windows key lock button that you can engage, which basically just instantly disables the Windows keys, so when you're gaming, you don't accidentally knock yourself out of the game. Alright, so we're going to open up the software that controls the keyboard, and this can be installed directly from Corsair's website. It doesn't actually come on a DVD or anything with the keyboard. You have to go download it. But it's basically called the Corsair Utility Engine. It's actually a really powerful piece of software, but you're going to find out really quickly it's not intuitive. And so I want to recommend that you guys actually go and visit the forums that we have right here on Corsair. It's forums.corsair.com, and go there and just check out the keyboard and mice section. Trust me, there is a lot of information out there, and we're actually going to be talking about some of the stuff that I've downloaded from there to really make this keyboard do some neat stuff. Alright, so as you can see in the software, we just have a default profile here and a default settings, and I just set all the keys to a color of white, and nothing's assigned. If you want to assign something to a key, you just hover over it, right click, and you can assign actions, you can do stuff with switching, you can do stuff with profiles. Again, you're going to find it's not very intuitive. You're going to want to go read through the forums to figure a lot of the stuff out. But what's really important is because this is an RGB keyboard, the lighting effects are what really make this keyboard shine. Now, if you go over to the lighting tab right here, you can select any key. Like right now, let me go ahead and just select a whole bunch. You can drag and drop. I'm going to select all the F keys. Now, if you look on the keyboard up here, all the F keys are white. I'm going to change them to green. So now all of the F keys are now green. And I can also grab another row. Let's just grab like W, A, S, D. And I just held down Control to do a multi-select. And I'm going to go ahead and change those to yellow. Now let me turn the lights down in the room, because I will tell you that with a lot of light in the room, the LEDs aren't that bright. I've seen some other keyboards that seemed like the light came through the keycaps better, but in the dark, this thing is insanely bright. All right, I went ahead and turned down my studio light. Now you can see I've got yellow keys here, I've got green keys up here, and in the software you can literally select any key you want and assign it a color, and you can assign it the whole spectrum. It's like 16.8 million colors can be generated here. So let's change this to like, I want the enter key to be red. Now it's just that easy, it really is. You just select the keys and select the color, and then that's the easiest way to just get the keyboard colors the way you want. But this keyboard can do quite a bit more than this, and this is where it gets really, really cool. Is you can come down to effects, and you can see I have rainbow wave, color shift, color pulse, color ripple, type lighting key, and type lighting ripple. Now, if I select one of these effects, like rainbow wave, now you can see the keyboard, it's actually oscillating a color wave across the surface of the keyboard. How cool looking is that? That's just, you don't have to do anything but just select that effect. And again, you can adjust the brightness level if you want to. Like I can bring it down and have it just, neutrally bright or super, super bright. I can also come down here and say I want to do like a color shift. And the color shift's just going to change from like red and to blue and then another color right here. It just flips through the color spectrum. I can also do a color pulse where the keyboard does kind of a breathing thing. You can see it's kind of just like transitioning between my original colors and some other colors, just kind of doing a pulse setting here. You got color ripple, so now you've just got ripples of color just going through the keyboard, but you notice it's still remembering the colors that I set for like WASD and the F keys when it's rolling through. So these are just some of the effects that are on there, like type lighting. If I hit a key, see how the key stays a color when I type? I mean, that's pretty cool, right? And then it slowly transitions back. It's like a heat map. Probably not a good idea if you're typing in passwords. And you also have the ripple effect, which is every time you hit a key, the light ripples out away from it. Now remember, these are just the built-in effects, guys. These are just the things that come with the keyboard. You can actually do some pretty amazing stuff beyond that. Like for instance, I just went to the forum that you see right here, and up on the forum, you can see they have the RGB Profile Hall of Fame. Now if I click on this and open up the link, you can see it shows us all these different effects that people have created that you can download. And the cool thing about these effects is if you click on the action or lighting tabs up here, you can create all kinds of custom effects. Now, it is not intuitive. I'm going to tell you that right now. You're going to want to download these profiles and investigate how they work and tweak them, because creating one from scratch, I tried for about an hour and I couldn't do anything really, really cool. So I was like, it's not as intuitive as you'd think. But the cool thing is, Corsair does plan on making a Lua scriptable interface for this keyboard, which means in the future, later in this year, you might be able to actually write Lua scripts for your favorite games and stuff that pull information from the games and display that data on the keyboard. Like, how cool would it be if you're playing like World of Warcraft and you cast a spell or did something and that key pulsed while that thing was warming up or that skill was warming up and then turned green again when it was ready? Or what if you were using Windows and you wanted to see a hard drive LED blink and you made your escape key just blink red, like your hard drive LED. Stuff like that will be possible once they have this Lua scriptable interface in place. So just keep an eye out for that. I will be doing a Codegasm episode on that as soon as Corsair releases it. Alright, so I already went ahead and downloaded some of these profiles. So if you go over to Profile, I'm just going to say up here, you click on Import Profile. And then you can see I imported one for Adobe Creative Cloud. So, and then I have the Nightrider is really cool, and I have Lightning. I have Super Mario Brothers, which is like Mario run across the keyboard, and Plasma, which is really cool. But let's go ahead and start out. Let me show you how useful it is. Let's go ahead and open up the Adobe CC 2014 profile. Now, if you look at the keyboard right here, it's set up right now for Photoshop. You see it's got Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and After Effects. So I can switch between these different keyboard layouts. And the colors of the keys show me which keys actually have functions inside of Photoshop. So it's kind of like back in the day when you used to have those cool little cards that you lay over the keyboard that would tell you what things did. Now colors are kind of replacing that. And I think that that's actually a really cool use of this, especially for games where you want to glance down at the keyboard and you only want to see keys that do something and you don't want to see any of the keys that don't. All right, so let's import another profile. Let's go ahead and import Nightrider. This is one of my personal favorites. Now, here's one of the problems that I found with the software that I didn't like. When you import multiple profiles, they do conflict with each other. Like right now it's saying, oh, there's already a button group with an invalid key name. Literally, I just have to push OK to get by it. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, and one time I had to push OK on one of the profiles like 30 times. and it didn't make a hell of a lot of sense, but it looks like some of the profiles don't really coexist so well. Like importing one profile and then another can affect that original profile. Now, I've been in constant contact with Corsair, and they assure me that their full effort and dedication is on improving this software, because it's definitely the weak link right now. It's not very intuitive. It does have some stability issues. Now, for me, it's been working great, but I've heard a lot of people in the community reporting that there are some stability issues. Even in their own forums, people are talking about it, and Corsair acknowledges these issues, and they're working fast to correct them. Now, once they're done correcting all those issues, that's when they're going to start moving to the SDK in the Lua programming, which I think is going to be the true potential of this keyboard, because once you have those interfaces to basically control the LEDs programmatically, now this keyboard becomes like a fourth display on your huge system, or an auxiliary display, and I think that's cool. All right, well, you see I have Nightrider running right now, and it's literally like Kit off Nightrider. It's just scanning back and forth, and then you get the little bit of the pulse in the background. It's actually one of my favorite of all the profiles, just because I think it looks really, really cool in the dark room. But let's go ahead and load up another one. Let's go ahead and import the Lightning profile. Now remember, all of these were downloaded from the forum and were created by users. So these are all things that you can create. And the neat thing is, the keyboard has the ability to react, not just change the color of the LEDs, but you combine things so that just touching a key triggers a whole bunch of other events. It's kind of like a programming language in itself. And I urge you guys to try it out. And if you guys come up with really cool keyboard profiles, please post links to them down in the comments, or come over and tweet me. I'm at Barnacles on Twitter. I would love to see what you guys come up with. But check this out. So this is Lightning. Watch what happens when I hit a key. You get like a little bit of a lightning flutter through the keyboard as you're typing. You know, this is a test of the keyboard. I mean, that's really cool, because it's like as you're pushing it, and then if you leave the keyboard alone, you just see these random little lightning things shoot through it every once in a while, just to show you something's going on. See that? But that's probably one of my favorites. Now, there's also the Plasma. So let's import the Plasma one. The Plasma one just makes the keyboard look like it's just kind of like wigging out. And when you hit stuff, you get like this cool little pulse pattern. Now, you have to admit, that's actually really, really cool, because a lot of the keyboards that I've used before, their RGB backlit, either let you change the color of all the keys to something, or they'll let you change an individual key, but that's all you do. This is the first keyboard I've tested where you actually can make reactive profiles, where when you push a key, it sparks a whole bunch of other events. I mean, you can create actions where if you push A, you know, it lights up a bunch of other keys. You push another key, it lights up a whole bunch of other keys. And then you trigger those with timers and loops and all kinds of stuff. And what you get is a very, very animated keyboard. And you have to admit, if you were like at a LAN party in a dark room or something, and your keyboard was just wigging out like that, people think it's pretty cool. And also when you're typing, as long as you're not looking down at the keyboard, it's not distractive, but it's like you definitely can see that change. It's badass. You have to admit, that is pretty badass. All right, so the last profile I'm going to load right here is going to be the Mega Rainbow. And I actually have to click, see, this is one of those ones you got to click update, 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 you know, because it's conflicting with a bunch of stuff. So I have to just go through it, update, 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 update. This is a little bit annoying to have to go through this. You should be able to load profiles and have them be completely atomic and autonomous and not interfere with other profiles. It does. Oh my gosh, lighting conflicts, lighting conflicts. All I can do is just spam the update button.
Spam, 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 spam. Come on. There it goes. Okay.
So now I've got Mega Rainbow, and you can see Mega Rainbow is a lot brighter than the previous one, and it's a lot faster. And I pretty much prefer this over the built-in rainbow effect. Now, if you're looking at the software, now you can see under Actions, if I say Show All, you have one action under here for the orange flash. If you go under Lighting and Show All, look at all these actions. These are all the different actions, like, you know, brightness 10, duration 6.7 seconds, velocity 18. These are all the different actions that get brought together in that profile to create that lighting effect and that reactive lighting effect when you're using the keyboard. And you pretty much are going to have to depend on the forum. Now, one thing I thought was kind of interesting is if you plug in multiple keyboards, it actually allows you to program the keyboards independently, which I thought was a little odd that they thought about that and allowed you to have multiple keyboards connected to one system. I don't think that's something a lot of people do. But in this case, it is possible, and you can independently program each keyboard. Now, one thing I should have covered a little bit earlier in the video is the first thing you want to do when you run the software for this thing is go under Settings, and you want to come down here to Software Update. You want to make sure you're running the latest version of the Q software. And then once you do that, you also want to make sure that you update the keyboard's firmware. And the way you do that is just click on the device tab and come down here and click on update firmware. Now you want to make sure that your firmware and your software are always updated to the latest versions, because sometimes they change things in the Q software that require new changes that were in the firmware, and if you get mismatched, you'll run into problems. Also, another neat feature is if you go into the profiles and you click on the performance tab, you can actually add disable Alt Tab and disable Alt F4 for the Windows lock key that you have up at the top of the keyboard. Now I'll tell you why that's cool. I was recently at an event called PDX Land, and somebody thought it'd be really cool to just come over and hit Alt F4 a ton of times and close out everything. Had I been playing the game and I had the Windows key lock engaged on that and they just weren't, you know, they didn't think about disengaging that lock, it wouldn't have done anything. And I think that's actually really cool that you can protect yourself from those keystrokes that could potentially pull you out of a game. Now, unfortunately, as I was doing this video, this is the first crash I've experienced, but you can see the Corsair utility engine is not responding. It's stuck, and I'm basically going to have to kill it and restart it. So I did experience my first crash. Now, keep in mind, I've been using the keyboards for a couple of days now, but this is the first time that I've rifled through so many tabs in a short period of time. But you can definitely see that the software isn't 100% stable, and it does have some work ahead of it. But Corsair acknowledges that in the forum, and they are actually working to make it better every single day. And I will tell you right now that the keyboard does come at a pretty high premium. The K70, you're looking at about $170 USD at the time of making this video. And that's a pretty steep price for an RGB mechanical keyboard. You can get some others that obviously don't have the same level of functionality that this does for significantly less. But my expectation would be the software for $170, I really would want the software to be completely sorted out and working flawlessly. But just like with anything else, it's kind of a new product. It's coming to market. There's not a lot of experience out there on it yet. So, and they have been releasing regular versions of the software, so I can tell they're really trying. So I'm willing to overlook that. I should also note that when the Q software is not running, you will notice that the keyboard will just appear to be frozen. The profile and all of the mechanics of like how the keys and the reactive stuff and is all done through the Q software. And I've been doing a little bit of reading, and I think there are ways that you can store a profile permanently on the keyboard. But in my experience with just loading the profiles and using them, when the Q software stops, whatever color is currently on the keyboard just stays until you start it again. But that's another reason why the software needs to be really, really stable. What really makes a keyboard is how well it types. So let's go ahead and do some type racer. There you go. 125 words per minute and 99.6% accuracy. This is a wonderful keyboard to type on, guys. Alright guys, well that concludes my review of the Corsair K65 10 keyless RGB backlit Cherry MX Switch gaming keyboard. God, that's a mouthful. And the K70 for you accountant types. Now I have to say I'm actually really, really pleased with both of these keyboards. I find that I don't use 10 key that much, so I'm going to be leaning to the K65 to be on my desk from now on. Now this guy actually has really good feeling keycaps. You guys saw my typing test. I hit 125 words per minute. For me in my old age, that's actually pretty good. And I love how easy it is to clean and see under the switches, and I like the way that the light comes out of the LEDs around the keycaps without having a plastic shroud covering it. That coupled with the different positions that the keyboard can be in and everything, it's actually very, very ergonomic. The only thing that I can really ding the keyboard on is the software isn't very intuitive. I'll tell you right now, you need to go to the Corsair forums. I'll even have a link down in the video description. Make sure you go to the forums, read all the stickies and everything. It'll make a lot more sense. If you just try to open up the software and figure things out beyond just changing the color of a certain key, you're going to get confused just like me really, really quickly. But once you have the forums backing you up, it's really cool. And the forums are very, very responsive. I posted a question there and I got answers immediately, both from Corsair and other enthusiasts. So guys, I really, really think this is a cool keyboard. The only other thing that I gotta ding it on though, and I wish people would do this, is there's no USB ports on this keyboard. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's actually a big deal to me on a keyboard. I like to be able to plug in my USB thumb drives and stuff like that right into my keyboard on my desk to access them. And the fact that this actually supports USB 3.0, it seems like it would be really easy just to put a USB port on the side. I'm sure maybe there's some power issues involved or some reasons why they couldn't do it, but me personally, I love having USB ports on my keyboard. So that's another thing I just have to ding it on slightly. But overall, I'm actually very, very impressed with this keyboard. And at the end of the day, what's really important above everything is how nice it is to type on, and this thing is incredibly nice to type on. All right, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments or come over and tweet me. I am at Barnacles over on the Twitter thing. Also, be sure and check the video description. It contains lots of links to information such as the Corsair forum and affiliate links to help the channel. And also at the end of every video, in the video description, I have a question and answer section for all of the most commonly asked questions that are down on the video so that you guys can get quick answers to stuff that people just keep asking the same question over and over and over again. It seems to be very, very helpful. So make sure you check out that video description before you leave a comment or a question down below. All right, guys, well, it's time to wrap this up because I have a lot more mechanical keyboards to review and some headphones. So you guys, stay tuned. We're going to get back into this hardware review gig really hard. It's going to be fun. All right, take it easy, guys. Till next time. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please take a moment and subscribe to my channel. It helps me a lot. Also, come over to Twitter. I'm at Barnacles. I'm a real social guy. Also, if you have a couple of minutes, check out some of these many other videos. I made them myself.